The infamous stop and frisk program that the New York City Police Department implemented, it was kind of well-intentioned but poorly executed. There are things where you need not only experience, but you need a certain amount of knowledge as to the particular area you're policing, the individuals you're attempting to police, and the trends that are happening within the community. Without a full view of that sort of thing, then what happens is you end up sometimes using an iron fist where a velvet glove would have done. There's a saying that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And to a lot of the individual officers implementing these programs, that became the predominant view. Everything needed to be enforced to the letter of the law, and the spirit of the law was cast aside because numbers and the ability to say that you stopped someone and put that on a piece of paper, it kind of took precedent over common sense.
What are some changes that you would like to see?
Ideally, I think myself and a lot of people would like to see policing done in a way which involves the community a lot more. To some extent, that's not always possible because a lot of communities tend to have leaning towards apathy, where a lot of involvement with the police department isn't necessarily carried out because of the level of mistrust. That's something that time and a lot of outreach is going to have to try to overcome. But as for myself, I would like to see programs put in place where officers, experienced officers who have kind of, as they say in the police department, rock and rolled, been out there, been involved in a lot of capers, as we call them, mentor younger officers with a mind towards the specific needs of the community and the balance between people's rights, their obligations, the law, and just in terms of the general good of the public.
Do you find that a lot of the officers don't know the community? They don't live in the community, most of them, is that correct?
That's, but generally, just due to the population itself of the city, you're gonna have a lot of people from outside of areas that need a heavier police presence, who are gonna be put into those areas to do the policing. And you're always then gonna have that lack of knowledge about the people of that community. Specific examples would be Haitian people. I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from Grenada. I grew up in a heavily Caribbean neighborhood in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. Now, when a lot of police officers who may not have grown up and been exposed to a lot of the cultural aspects of discussion, behavior, et cetera, when they see that, it causes sort of a rift in their minds. You know, they're not aware that a loud conversation in front of a barbershop and slamming dominoes is not necessarily something that the community is going to be in uproar against because that's the norm for that community. Yes. If you encounter a loud conversation between some older gentlemen about politics back in the islands, it's going to be loud, it's going to be boisterous, and you kind of have to know when you need to step in and kind of do a quality of life, hey, the noise, hey, you guys can't block the side with playing dominoes, and just let it go because that's the norm in the community. I mean, so there's a little bit of that, and that extends to other parts of the community as well. I mean, to the Asian population, I'm pretty sure they have their quirks that people from outside of that population don't understand, and therefore has a negative effect or not a smooth effect on how policing is done. You're always going to have that to some extent, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to be achieved where you have someone who's fully immersed in the culture of that particular area come in and start policing. I'm sure they try. I've seen where they would assign a lot of Asian officers to Asian communities. They were actually sued, the police department was, when they tried to move a lot of officers of color into one particular precinct right after the Abu Luwima situation. Oh, a lot of those officers sued because they felt like they were moved into a particular area to cover the city's behind publicly and politically. Right. But the city's intention was to have more officers that reflect the makeup of that community do the policing, and sometimes that backfires. So how can you do that without those repercussions all the time? It's not clear to me, but it would be ideal.